I will first introduce our guests, starting with the left of the table for you. He's an EVP at Pearl Street Films, the company co-founded by Matt Damon and Ben Affleck. He executive produced Kiss the Future. Drew Vinton, sorry.
Hello.
All the documentaries she produces are must-sees. She's the executive producer of Kiss the Future with her company Good Wolf Productions, Sarah Anthony. He's been present in our lives for many years now as the wonderful actor that he is, and we know that he was always involved in filmmaking as more than an actor. He's here as the producer of Kiss the Future, Matt Damon. A Canadian who lives in San Francisco but comes from the former Yugoslavian countries that this film is about. We can feel his strong vision in every scene of this powerful film, the director Nenad Cicin-Sain. A leading figure in Sarajevo's intellectual and artistic scene. She's one of the initiators of the news website Radio Sarajevo, and of course you recognize her as a protagonist of Kiss the Future, Vesna Zajmovic. He was the one who made things happen back then by caring, by daring. He's also central to this project, the writer Bill Carter. I will start with the first question. Thank you all for being here and bringing this powerful film to Berlinale. I would like to ask Nenad the first question. Could you please tell us how the project was initiated and what your relationship is to the film's content?
Well, I was born in what was once former Yugoslavia, Serbian mother, Croatian father, Albanian wife, and I was born in Slovenia. And I left and then was back there during the war. And when I was living, I live now in the United States, I started seeing kind of reflaring of nationalism in these things. And I started thinking a lot about what happened in my own country. And I knew about the concert. And I thought the concert would be an extraordinary vehicle for a way to talk about what happened in Yugoslavia. And so I was fortunate enough to work with Matt and Drew on a project, and I had heard, you have sometimes as a filmmaker different ideas and they just get traction, they're kind of like on a shelf and you wait for certain things to happen. And, Matt, I heard, had a long-time relationship with Bono. And so that gave me the idea of maybe there's a chance here because there was, this concert was so important, but there was no footage from it anywhere. It didn't exist on the internet. There was some home footage. And so I asked Matt and Drew, I asked Drew, who asked Matt if they would get involved in this project. And they said they would. And I was researching and I found Bill's extraordinary story. And, I wanted to find a way to tell the point of view from a lot of different, points of view for the narrative. And I started working with Bill, and we started, coming up with a concept of what the film would be. And we outlined a kind of narrative direction for the film. And then Pearl Street, Matt and Drew helped us with get financing for the movie. And then we all worked, Bill had a tremendous amount of relationships. Many of the people who are in the movie are his personal friends from the siege, and he introduced us to them, and we, together as a team, built this collaboration to tell this story from many different points of view. So that's the kind of simple, broad strokes of how it came together.
Bill, can you tell us how it was to be approached about revisiting these events that you wrote about, made a documentary on after the war?
Yeah, anytime you revisit these events, for people who have lived in them, it's not easy. You have to think if it's worth it. I mean, I'm sure my Bosnian friends get asked to do things, I get asked to do things, and is it worth going through that process? And this one felt worth it, not only because I met Nenad, but I knew that Pearl Street was going to be involved. I talked to Bono, I knew he would be involved. And then once we brought on Fabrica, which for us was This is Nenad's right here. Vesna, husband and wife. Their company's extraordinary. Once we brought them on, we really started to have faith that the Bosnian component of this would be very strong. They could bring in everybody we need, and I'm very fortunate. These are my friends. So for me, the joy is revisiting this with the Bosnian friends of mine who have an extraordinary story to tell.
Of course, if there are questions, raise your hands. Yes.
Hello, it's Pavis from RTL. Good to see you again, Matt. You remember our nighttime junket for The Martian in London?
Yes.
8 years ago. Question to Matt Damon, because this is, if I counted right, your 23rd production of a movie, which is really amazing, and I take my hat off for that, because you have the courage to spend some money for making new movies, which is very important. So, what attracts you in the production of a movie?
It's the same thing that attracts me as an actor. If I respond intuitively to it and it's moving to me, then I'll try to get involved. And this was, with Nenad's very humble, but it was a very personal story for him. And to listen to him talk about it, it was really impossible for us not to want to be involved. From the moment we heard about this all the way through. I mean, it was a very hard production for the people who were day to day on it, for Sarah, for Drew, for Nenad, for Eric, for all of these people, for like grinding in the edit. For me, I would get these cuts, and each cut I would watch was better than the last cut, and it just kept getting better and better. And it was exactly what he said he was going to do. We would get on the phone and talk for an hour or two, and really he was using me as a sounding board at that point. It's like, you get so close to a movie. Terrence Malick you would call it getting snowblind, where you're so deep in the edit, it's very hard to see what you're. And so a lot of times he'd just ask me questions, or I'd ask him, he'd say, "Are you getting this in this section?" And I'd say, "Yeah, well, let me quick link you this other little section and tell me this is what I'm going for. Am I?" And I'd say, "Yeah, you're." And then I'd say what he didn't want to hear, which was, "Okay, keep going." So they really had to grind, and it was but I'm just very proud to be associated with this. It's a beautiful movie, and just to meet everybody today for the first time. I've been looking at them on screen for a long time, and even the raw interviews. I was telling Ines back there that just his raw interview that I saw before it got cut together. I mean, it was an incredibly moving. Experience, kind of watching, listening to them talk about what they lived through, and so for us it was really, once we heard this story for Pearl Street, we just wanted to facilitate, and that was really our only role, and that's really all we were there to do.
Can I just add one thing to the question before? That's such an important piece that I left out is I had never made a documentary before, so we went to Sarah, who's the best at doing this, and it was because of having her with me every day that we did it the way we did.
Sarah, maybe we can hear you. You produced a number of films on people who had extraordinary life stories. How does this film? What makes this film special?
I think the thing that's most special about it is the music and the art scene that grew up underground in Sarajevo during the siege, and the humor. Especially, like meeting Shibi, who we call amongst ourselves the John Cleese of Sarajevo. And Bono says in the film that humor is the evidence of freedom, and the fact that they kept their spirits so high when everything was happening around them was just incredibly inspiring, and they're still like that today.
Yes.
Yes. Hi, my name is Marcus, One Press TV from Sweden. It's great to have you here. Matt Damon, just to follow up quick there. So how did you come in contact with the project? Was your thought when you heard about it? And how big was your involvement in the project?
Well, I don't want to be redundant, but Nenad came to us with the idea, and we knew right away that we wanted to be a part of it. And so that really, I mean, my involvement was really kind of throughout, talking to Nenad throughout. Eventually, as cuts started to come in, watching the cuts and giving feedback, you know, but as I said, like the real grinding of the day-to-day stuff was done by the people up here with me, not by me. I had the best job because I got to see things at kind of various stages and with time in between, and then time to reflect. So it was a blissful experience for me.
Yeah, you never know. That's the hardest part as being a director is, are you on the right path? You know, and when you have Matt to turn to with the amount of experience and talent that he has, that's where you feel safe to say, yeah, keep going this way. Think about this, keep going that way. That's like the greatest gift you can have as a director. And with Drew and Sarah and all of them, but Matt was the one who kept us safe when we needed to be safe.
Maybe, Drew, could you tell us about this adventure from your position?
From my position, well, I'd gotten to know Nenad through a script he was writing for us at the time he approached us with the idea. And to be frank, if somebody had sent me a movie script of this, I would send it back saying it's too incredible. No one's going to buy this. But this was a true story. And the interesting thing for me is the more I discovered about it, the better it got. Those characters over there are true characters, and they're wonderful human beings, and they gave us the opportunity to tell their story at a really tough time in their lives. And for that, I thank them. And I hope we've done your stories justice.
Yes?
Good afternoon, my name is Oksana, TV1, Kyrgyzstan, Central Asia. Mr. Damon, question to you. There is a producer behind every author, and is there anyone behind the producer?
That's a kind of a meta question. Yeah, well, obviously, yeah. Look, I mean, we all work hard at these jobs and couldn't do them without the support systems that we have, the various support systems that we all have. For me, I have a great family, so that would be those are the people behind me. But look, this movie had a lot of producers because it required a lot of producers. It required a lot from a lot of producers, actually, and so I can turn that question over to Sarah as well and to Drew and.
No, Sarah.
Yeah, Drew's behind me.
And Alan Maloney and Jennifer Pitcher from the U2 team.
Yeah.
And Blake Levin and Kevin Iwashima from 5th season. And Graham Taylor.
And Ned O'Hanlon from U2.
Yeah.
I mean, I think one of the things that is very difficult as a filmmaker is to realize a vision, because there's so many variables and agendas. And the thing that was so special with this team was, you know if you're working with Drew and Matt that you're going to be protected. You know they have the experience. You know that you're going to be able to bring your vision to life in a way that you have few opportunities in life. And then, Drew helped me bring on Sarah, and Bill helped us bring on Fabrica. And so there became this building of a family, of a team of collaboration where each one of us was, it was very difficult to make this movie because of the stories was carrying another.
And Vesna did all our research and was just like the biggest support we could possibly imagine. Vesna and Perla at Fabrica.
Vesna, we would love to hear your experience of making this film and why is this film, it's important that this film was made.
Yeah, so at the beginning I would say that not only on behalf of me and friends around me, but on behalf of citizens of Sarajevo, first of all, I would like to thank all of producers and persons who are behind producers. Mr. Matt Damon, Mr. Ben Affleck, also the members of the band, U2, and Drew, Sarah, Nenad, Bill, to recognize Sarajevo, to recognize our story, not only as a moment of history, but also an issue, a topic which is, I think, very essential for global political situation today. And when you watch the movie, you will see that everything what happened in Sarajevo 30 years ago under the siege, it's so deeply and so strongly connected with the events that are happening today. By recognizing this, you guys just make confirmation, just make proof that all what we have done, all of these guys done, was somehow on the right side of the civilization. And thank you very much for that. Speaking about my personal experience, I would say that for me it was very painful, very emotional, and it was some kind of a process of healing. I would say that most of us who survived the siege of Sarajevo, we have some kind of feeling that is called post-traumatic stress disorder. To be honest, in certain level, I also sometimes experience this kind of state of mind. And this is why the most of us refuse to talk about siege. We are absolutely didn't talk about the siege, maybe even not talk with our children or people around us. And when Bill and Nenad asked me to be a researcher for this documentary, for me it was very demanding, not only in a practical way how to make my big research and how to form the team of researchers, but also how to set things with myself, with my personal memories, with my personal experience. And slowly, as the story has been grown, it was somehow obvious that my story and my life story and my love story would also be and will also be involved in the movie. And this is a moment when everything changed to me, because from the shoes of researcher, I have to come into the shoes of a witness. So not to be objective anymore, but to be really honest in terms what were my experience and what I felt during the siege. I should say very personally that I was in love. So the early days of war and early days of a siege was the days of my biggest ever love to that man. So when people ask me, how did you survive the first day of the siege? I said, I was in love, and this day was some kind of clash between the most elevating feelings that women can have and the most brutal horror of the siege, of destruction. And this is how most of us in Sarajevo, how we felt. Because all of us, we got our families, we got our friends, we got our lives. You know, you want to live, you are a young person, you want to listen to music, you want to listen to U2, you want to make rock and roll, you want to make love, everything. And suddenly, a siege happened. It is something that we can, for example, we can make connection with the Berlin in 1961, when over the night the barrier between East and West Berlin emerged. This is how it happened in Sarajevo. So suddenly, all of your dreams, all of your love, all of your life was in risk to be destroyed. And this is why I say the process of making this movie, for me personally and for all of us, was also a healing process. So thank you very much, guys.
Thank you, Vesna.
That was a difficult conversation we had asking you to be in the movie.
Yes.
Because she was our researcher and doing production company, and I asked her one day, we have to tell your story.
Yeah. So this is the story. Thank you.
This is exactly what I wanted to ask. When are you going to commercialize the movie? I'm from Mexico, from the most reading newspaper in Latin America. And we lived some kind of war in Latin America in many places, but silent wars. But I wanted to hear, when are you going to commercialize your documentary? Because it can be like a healing process to I wanted, because I have I wanted to cry because I have a friend of mine who had the chance to leave Sarajevo at the last moment. She was working for Volkswagen, and Volkswagen put a plane for the people who were working there, but her husband saw how his brother was shot in the back. And I lived with my friend her traumata years after her traumata, and it's still there. The traumata is still there. Maybe if they have the chance to see your documentary, that could be a healing process, but because that stays here and here, and that's why I was so emotional. And I wanted to thank you for the song accompanied the wedding. I didn't know there is an Italian. It's a Brazilian song. No ganas al intentar en olvidar. Thank you for that, because all Latin American people know that song. But I didn't know there is an Italian
version. It found its
version.
home in that wedding.
Yeah.
It found its home in that wedding.
Yeah.
The song did.
Details is the name of the song. Thank you very much. So, when are you going to commercialize the movie?
We're going to want as many people to watch this as possible. Timing is TBD, but the whole point of doing this is to show it to many people.
I would just add the answer to your question. So I would ask not only all of you are journalists, I'm also a journalist, so we are colleagues. When you think about the title of this movie, Kiss the Future, it was a legendary historical sentence of Bono opening the concert in Sarajevo. It was year 97, so the war was over, but the peace hasn't started yet. And Bono said, F the future.
No, F the past.
F the past, sorry, yes, F the past, and kiss the future. But it's not only the message. Try to think about this message today, in the year 2023. What does it mean, kiss the future? So how open we should be to think about the next generation, how open we should be, and how strong and determined we should be in preserving what we have, this beautiful planet, the democracy that we achieved so hard, that people before us achieved so hard. So I just want to ask all of you to think about it and to kiss the future together with us.
What is the situation in today's Sarajevo in terms of the living together? Maybe Bill also, because you Bill. Regularly go back to Sarajevo, and so you have this updating of...
Yeah, I mean, I think that, as Vesna mentioned, the biggest problem with the peace process that happened in Dayton is that it basically froze the place, and it didn't really resolve it. It wasn't a peace. And the nationalists that are still there still feel empowered because they didn't get punished. They didn't lose what they went after and killed for. So what you have is kind of a bizarre, endless. This is kind of complicated also because of the Dayton Peace Agreement. The 2-year cycle, it just keeps. It's very hard to even get the trash picked up. It's not a place that functions very well politically, and so it's kind of sitting there waiting for a breakthrough that would take the world body to break through, because the organization of the UN is the one who made the peace agreement. So it's kind of stuck, and it's very frustrating for people I know. And they have a big brain drain. People are leaving the country, and they're trying to keep them there, but it's hard. And so there's a lot of challenges in Sarajevo and in Bosnia right now. And I'm afraid that, not to bring up Ukraine too much, but we should bring up Ukraine because there's some similar things there that in February, when we almost started filming, Ukraine broke out. If Ukraine had been less successful in defending themselves, I guarantee you Bosnia would be in a lot more heat. Yeah. But because they got pushed by the Ukrainians, I think that it's kind of helped Bosnia kind of calm down.
Well, we started making a film about the end of the last war in Europe, and then war in Europe broke out.
And so we had to make all kinds of
So we started working on the film, I think, 6 to 8 months before Ukraine. And then once that happened, it changed many things. Even though the story's still the same, the emotion became much more visceral.
Yeah, the impact on the interviewees was immediately noticeable, and a lot of people expressed what Vesna said about having PTSD and actually couldn't sit down for an interview.
Yes, during the siege in Sarajevo, I should say that looking from this perspective, European values was protected during the siege of Sarajevo, were protected by people who defended Bosnia. Because what is Sarajevo in its core, in historical continuity, is a Europe in a core, is a Europe in a nutshell. Still, and maybe I would describe it more obviously by mentioning Howie B., who is a composer for the music of this movie. When Howie B. and I made research for the music, it was in September 2022, he said, wow, you have mosque which is 500 years old in Sarajevo, and the oldest mosque in London is 100 years old. But in Sarajevo, we have a church which is 800 years old. We have synagogue which is almost 500 years old. And we have roots of a people who lived 8,000 years ago from now. So that means that the multiculturalism of Sarajevo is not something which is fabricated by globalization, but it is something that we lived for centuries and centuries. This is why, when talking about it, I think that history will win, and the historical process will continue in protecting Bosnia and Sarajevo as a multicultural example for the world. What has happened now are just, winds from east and west and from everywhere, but I think that Bosnia will survive and Sarajevo will survive, and all of these mosques, churches, synagogues are proofs, because it happened before. And thanks to Bosnian people and thanks to people around Bosnia who recognize the importance of this geographical toponym, we survived and European values survived.
As a storyteller, you'll attach to a theme or an idea, and one of the most important thing was the multiculturalism of Sarajevo. And what you do sometimes is you really put more attention on that than its actual value, or you really kind of juice it to make it land as a piece in the story. But that's not the case in Sarajevo. When you go there, what is so extraordinary is to have a mosque on one corner and a synagogue on another and a church and an Orthodox church, and to hear the tapestry of those sounds of the call to prayer from the synagogue and the choir, and they have inter-religious choirs that sing together on the weekends. It is really something extraordinary. So,
if I can say something on a personal note, when I went in '93, which is when I went, after 2 weeks, my instinct was to leave. Because of the horror and the death. And the only reason I stayed is because I met a combination of these people. And once you meet these people, they have a humanity in them and laughter and humor that made me fall in love with them in a way that I didn't know where to go besides to stay. So the power of their spirit of survival is just infectious and it's beautiful.
Yes.
My name is Mahari Sigit, Africa Refugee News. Well to see you back, Mr. Damon. But my question is, I have lived Sarajevo because I used to work with the Jesuit Refugee Center in Rome. And seeing the refugees coming from Sarajevo, I said, oh my God, refugees from Europe, because we were all Africans. But today, I see that America cinema, independent cinema, is waking up, because Champagne brought us a documentary, and now you bring us this beautiful documentary of Sarajevo. How much will you help the people of Ukraine, how much you will help people who are suffering in Africa about war, because the difference between Pavarotti and this Bono is Pavarotti wanted to help, Bono wanted to heal himself because he comes from a similar situation, from war. You know, he wrote Bloody Sunday. I don't know if somebody remembers, sure. But at that time it was really hard to sing those songs, and he had the courage. So do you think the independent film, not Hollywood, will go on giving us these beautiful documentaries that people can learn, the young people that can learn what happened in Sarajevo? Because here in the Berlinale 3-4 years ago, Jamila brought a film about the women of Sarajevo, and she won the Golden Bear. And I interviewed her, and they said, how do you do it? I said, oh, you know, like, I still have the wall inside, you know, the war inside. Because it cannot go away. It doesn't go away in Eritrea, it doesn't go away in Liberia. So how can you help more? Because this documentary is very, very important.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. That's a wonderful question. I mean, the answer is I can only try to lend my abilities and energy to the things that I believe in, like this, and you know, I would love to make a lot of documentaries like this, but this one just kind of came to me, right? It wasn't. It was a real blessing. It's an incredible story, as Drew said. We couldn't believe it was true. And that these incredible people opened up and let us help tell it and were open with us, and these interviews that were just amazing. Their willingness and their vulnerability, that's really what this was about. So our interests are in making things like this, but there's not an overarching strategy, I would say. We're just taking them, you know, as we see these great stories, we'll do our best to facilitate the people who can tell them really, really well.
And I think the other part that's really important is, you know, we had their support, but we still had to go get financing. So the studio that backed us, that backed Superpower, is what enables us to sit here. You know, it's a Hollywood company who believes that powerful stories have purpose and art can affect change. And that's why we're here, because of the studio.
Yeah, we should take a moment to thank Fifth Season.
Yeah, the studio's Fifth Season.
Yeah. Graham Taylor, Kevin Iwashina, and Blake Levin for being such supporters. And, you know, we couldn't have made it without them, obviously, so we thank you.
But like the fact that, you know, Matt is known all over the world. Film has, as a medium, has the potential to reach everyone. So when people like him and more people like Fifth Season lend a voice to these things, that's what will help. It does help.
So we have time for one last question. Go ahead.
Yes, one question for Derek Radio Bulgaria. I have a quick question for Mr. Damon. The other day we saw the documentary about The Superpower by Mr. Sean Penn, actor turned director. And in connection to the last question, I wanted to ask you if you have in the near future, if you thought about this, any film or documentary about this kind of causes, humanitarian causes, and this kind of terrors that are all over us, and in parallel to the war and the Russian invasion in Ukraine. Have you had a conversation, or will you have a conversation with Mr. Zelensky in the future?
Well, that would be up to Mr. Zelensky. Obviously, we've watched, as everyone has, with horror at the events that have unfolded there in the last year, and you know, I did get a chance to meet his wife in New York during the UN General Assembly. Yeah, I mean, look, I think a lot of wonderful films are being made about it now. I'm sure there will be many more made going forward. You know, we don't have anything on right now, any doc that we're doing. I actually do have somebody over there researching one, but it's in its early stages. Yeah.
Thank you all for your interest. As was mentioned before, we have almost all the protagonists of the film with us. It will be a wonderful premiere tonight. Thank you all.
Thank you.